All right, everybody, what is up? Welcome to another week of the Samong Yang Outdoors podcast. We are excited to be with you this week and talk about first aid in the backcountry or first aid hunting, just first aid in general. We are joined by our buddy this week, Steve. He's a familiar face on Samong's YouTube channel. He's a very familiar face on his own YouTube channel, which is Northwest Outdoor Adventures. And hopefully Steve and I and Samong can bring a little bit of value about preparedness and dealing with first aid issues in the backcountry. But before we jump into the podcast, we got to thank our sponsors and the companies that partner with us, as always. First off, we've got Reveal. These are amazing cell cameras. Tacticam makes these line of cell cameras that just make scouting in areas that you can use game cameras, obviously, just a breeze. Between their solar panel setups and their automatic selection of carriers, you get photos right to your phone all the time. It's fun in the off season, and you can allow your places to rest without going in constantly to change batteries and check cards.
That's right. We also want to thank Vortex Optics, longtime partner of ours. If you shop at eurooptic.com, you can use code SY10 to save you some cash on all Vortex Optics products. When I first started hunting, or at least when I first started getting serious about how I want to hunt, the Vortex Diamondback 10x42 binocular was my best friend. And that, frankly, if I had to be honest, is one of the most popular binoculars on the market today because, one, it works, and two, it's not that expensive. A little over $200, and a binocular will change your hunting life.
Absolutely. And the third company that we are working with here is Onyx Hunt. This is an online mapping software program. Whether you use it on your phone or on the desktop, this is an essential for all hunters. Shows you private property, public boundaries. It shows you burns. It shows you vegetation, all the good stuff that you want for scouting or while you're in the field trying to plant a stalk.
That's right. So before we kick things off, you guys know what time it is. Welcome back to Trivia Duel. Folks, if you guys have Trivia Duel questions or fast facts, shoot us an email. We'd love your help. It's triviaduel@syoutside.com. That's TRIVIADUEL @syoutside.com.
Absolutely.
With that said, Nate, let's start with you.
Okay.
Well, Steve, did you bring something?
No, I did
Okay.
Oh, bummer.
We just had to make sure the guess was cleared.
We'll let you guess, though. All right. Within today's theme, we are going to go with the most common cause of death in hikers. Is it A, dehydration, B, falls, C, exsanguination, which is just a fancy word for bleeding out, or D, starvation?
So dehydration, falling, bleeding out, or what?
Starvation.
Starvation. Steve, do you have a crack at this?
I'm going to go with falls.
I'm going to go with dehydration.
Both good answers. The right answer is falls. In a 2020 study from Forensic Science International, they looked at 77 fatal hiking incidents in Switzerland between the years of 2003 and 2018, and 77 of those 77 injuries of those fatalities came from falling incidents.
To add on to that, this is just a random thing I know. Falling to be considered lethal is as low as 6 feet.
Yeah.
You don't have to be very high to have a lethal fall.
You can have a lethal ground level fall, in fact, off of your feet on your,
Yeah, I think 11% of all falls are about 6 feet.
Well, I think you're going to run this podcast and teach us today.
No, I only know those ones because I do research before these podcasts. Well, I guess we're on the same page because I also wanted to cater towards first aid. I'm assuming you two know this question, but maybe I'll be surprised you don't.
Yeah, maybe we don't.
In general, how many stages are there in hypothermia and what are they called? This is multiple choice, unless you guys just want to take a crack at it.
Oh, let's hear the options.
Okay. Is it 2, 3, 4, or 5?
For my purposes, 2.
For my purposes, 2 as well. I would guess it's the cold stage and the warm stage.
Interesting. Steve, do you have names for yours?
Oh, we go by the same ones.
Okay. So I'm assuming there's a lot of merit to what you guys just said because you both are on the same page. But in general, there are 3 stages of hypothermia, and this is what they're called. The first one that you enter into is mild hypothermia, which is when the body temperature is between 32 degrees Celsius and 35 degrees Celsius, or 90 to 95 degrees Fahrenheit. After that, it goes to moderate hypothermia, where your body temperature is now between 28 to 32 Celsius, or between 82 and 90 Fahrenheit. And then after that, it goes into severe hypothermia, where the body temperature is simply below 28 Celsius or 82 Fahrenheit.
That is quite severe hypothermia.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So,
So
I'm
I'll-
assuming you guys have a little bit more, just a broad.
That's a pretty good leeway, and we will actually talk about hypothermia
Yeah.
here a little bit in the podcast,
Yep.
because that's something that is very prevalent in
Absolutely.
outdoors,
Mm-hmm.
backpacking, hikers, hunters.
Yep.
It's prevalent in the outdoor world with injuries, and we'll go over that.
Yeah. In today's episode, folks, I'm just here for the ride. I know nothing about first aid, and I always make this joke whenever I hunt with these guys. I'm like, see, if something happens to me, I know I'm in good hands. But if something happens to you, you're on your own. Because all I'm going to be doing is giving you moral support, standing next to you.
Hey, moral support can be important.
It can be.
Well, before we jump into it, I guess we'll just give a little bit of background personally, myself and Steve here. And I mostly show my face in hunting and don't talk about it too much. What
Likewise.
my personal life
Yep.
is comprised of, but my personal day-to-day job is I work as a trauma nurse in a trauma ICU here in Spokane at the big hospital, and in addition to that, I have experience in rural medicine, so rural emergency medicine, and I have owned a first aid kit company in the past. And so one thing that, is an obvious disclaimer in this podcast is this is just sitting down in a discussion of 3 candid people. This is not professional medical advice. Absolutely consult your physician for first aid and verified resources on the internet. But today is just a discussion of things we like, things we've used, and information we found to be helpful.
Yep. I think that's the first important lesson is here is don't take medical advice from 3 random dudes you just found on the internet. Yeah.
Don't take medical advice from a hunting podcast.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. But
that's
we'll
right.
give you a few good tips, I think. It'll do you good in the backcountry or anywhere for that matter. Well, my name is Steve. Some of you guys might have seen me on Samong's channel. Have my own YouTube channel, as they mentioned. As Nate mentioned, I don't talk about my personal life as much as my content tends to focus on fishing and the outdoors, hunting, hiking, that sort of thing. My day-to-day job, I actually work at the same hospital Nate does. I'm an emergency room nurse. I'm one of the trauma nurses at the facility I work at. Earlier in my career, right after high school, I did have some EMT and firefighting experience and some rural medicine as well. So currently in the process of training to be a nurse practitioner. So just a little bit of medical knowledge there that I think some of you might find helpful.
Yeah,
And it's through medical school or nursing school that you two met each other.
that is
So
right.
it's true.
So
Yeah.
we're full circle now.
And we're full circle. Yeah, so
Yeah.
between at least the 2 of us, Steve and I, we have a little bit north of 20 years of either first responder or hospital clinical experience. And so we have a lot of anecdotal, evidence to pull from on what we see, how often we see it, especially with the outdoors community, the hunting, the hiking, the backpacking community. So a little bit to go over before we get into the fun gear of first aid kits and common injuries and things like that. And I think one of the most important things to talk about within first aid is before you get to the point of needing first aid. And that's going to be situational awareness. And I think this is something that everybody innately has. And you might think about it more than others. You might think about it less than others. But when you're out in a situation, especially not a comfortable situation, not your home, when you're out in an unfamiliar environment, something that you have is situational awareness. And this is something that helps you keep safe. This is a survival mechanism of the human body, but it is something that you can become more aware of, especially while out hunting in this context, and start to analyze your situations and realize what situations put you in higher danger, what situations put you at higher risk of injury, and kind of just going through a hunt that you find yourself going through kind of a ebb and flow of risk for injury, you could say.
Yeah, ultimately, it's the best way to be safe is to prevent anything bad from happening in the first place.
Yeah.
That is the one key takeaway from today's point, not the main focus, but if you can prevent the injury, and we'll cover some tips and tricks, not ever need first aid, that's the best thing you can do. Also, everything we talk about today is very important to highlight. It's going to be first aid. That's why it's called that, not last aid. So it's steps you take to stabilize an injury, and then your main goal is going to be to go seek care at a proper facility with licensed professionals, physicians, and then so none of this is going to be final. It's prevent, stabilize, and then seek final treatment from a professional.
So before we go any further, from a green guy who really has no background at all regarding first aid, whether you're hiking, you're fishing, or you're hunting, does the overall spectrum of how you prepare mentally beforehand, or whatever, actual medical items you are carrying with you in the field change? Or are you just simply saying, if you're outside, this is the umbrella that you should be under? Because with hunters, for example, we deal with some things that hikers might not deal with. What am I talking about? We're carrying guns. So when you carry a gun, you risk gunshot wounds or broadhead wounds if you fall on a broadhead. Whereas hikers, some of them might not have to deal with that. And same with fishermen, right? Fishermen are dealing with hooks. They're by the water. If they fall in and it's cold, they have a higher risk of hypothermia than, let's say, just an avid hiker. So in a very broad spectrum, does your approach really change depending on what activity you're doing? Or is it simply, if you're outdoors, if you have this kit or this idea, it'll cover all the bases?
So I think it does in a sense, and I'll dive deeper into this. I think my kit is tailored to a particular activity more as far as time of year, where I'm going, and the general terrain. And we talked about situational awareness, that's being prepared for what you're going into. Also, I know this is more related to wilderness first aid, so we're assuming very limited resources. My first aid kit I pack in my truck is very different than the one I would carry in my backpack. Survival items kind of cross over into first aid. So I think somebody who loves to hike, I love to fly fish, and I like to hunt, right? I kind of experienced all of those leisurely activities we all love to enjoy. I don't think particularly hunting trips create a danger for me as far as the firearms concerned. Like, obviously, firearm safety is huge. It's the number one. I mean, this is not a podcast about gun safety, but that's hopefully you've already been well educated on that as a hunter and jumping ahead of the time. But if we get to the point of injury where you took a gunshot wound to your torso, your first aid kit's not going to help you much, probably at that point. I think where hunters are more likely to get hurt is going off the terrain. So your typical hiker typically follows a somewhat of a developed trail. Most common injuries, statistically, people are likely to experience anywhere in the backwoods, whether you're fly fisherman, hiker, hunter, is going to be sprains, musculoskeletal injuries. There's going to be ankle fractures, ankle twisting, sprains, blisters. You're talking cuts. Anecdotally, this is not a evidence-based statistic, but hunters I've seen come into the emergency room or have treated myself, biggest injury I see is knives. There should be a huge emphasis on firearms. Don't get me wrong. That is a very dangerous thing you're carrying. And I'm not anti-gun by any means. I don't want to come across that way. I have lots of firearms. I enjoy them. I love them. I just think sometimes only think of that as the main hazard, but so many other things are likely to get you first. Also, I think hunters go out in the woods in a time of year where injuries have bigger consequences. You can spend a night or two in the woods right now in July or August in the Pacific Northwest and likely be pretty okay waiting for help. If I'm late hunting deer in November and it's snowing / raining and I break a hip, it's a way different situation of survival very quickly. Where I think we need to be aware of as hunters particularly is the environmental exposure. You're going off the beaten path into rougher terrain, so all those risks of your musculoskeletal injuries increase. You're dealing with sharp objects. Let's say you do harvest an animal, of cutting yourself, whether it's fingers, wrist, or God forbid, you now take a knife to your thigh with a lot of big vasculature. You can get in some trouble pretty quickly.
I agree with you, and I'll kind of circle this back to the situational awareness, specifically hunting, but also, like you said, fishing and all these other outdoor activities. We tend to put ourselves in high stakes, high risk situations.
Absolutely.
And to just list out a few of those, we're talking about tracking animals,
Yep.
When you're tracking animals, almost all the time it's off trail. It can be in very aggressive terrain. And another thing you have to think about is a lot of time tracking animals is post-shot and adrenaline's pumping. You're not necessarily thinking about where you're going. You're thinking about getting to the animal and recovering the animal. And that's a very easy thing for your mind to kind of tunnel vision down and focus on and lose sight of the peripheral and the safety of the situation and where you're going. Another portion is cleaning animals. So this is something that is very unique to hunters. And it is where a lot of injuries in the backcountry come from, is like Steve was just saying, is knife wounds. We pride ourselves on keeping really sharp knives in the countries to process animals. And very often you're doing it in the dark, you're doing it tired, you're doing it in non-ideal areas. You're not doing it on a table in a shop. You're doing it on an unbalanced steep hill by yourself, tying it with paracord. Putting yourself, kind of taking these little chips away at risk and putting yourself at higher risk with these situations. And then a couple other ones are nighttime hiking, which is a big one getting into spots, and packing out with extremely heavy packs.
Yep.
And this is, again, a very unique thing to hunters, where Steve was talking about common injuries of musculoskeletal injuries, of sprains and fractures. And sprains, we like to talk about the knife injuries and the possible gunshot wounds and the falling in the river and getting hypothermia. But, a grade 2 or a grade 3 ankle sprain, especially if you're by yourself in the backcountry, can be a serious risk to your life.
Absolutely.
If you don't know how to deal with it and you don't know how to seek help and make a plan and things like that.
Exactly.
So by the sounds of it, it is a good idea to cater your first aid kit to the activity that you're doing.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Change mine constantly throughout the year.
So it's not a good idea to just go to Walmart and just grab a first aid kit and say, I'm good.
So this is actually one of my little soapbox speeches that I'll try not to get up on, and this is the next point I had written down, so you kind of read my mind here, is I believe one of the almost equivalent to not taking first aid in the country, taking first aid into the backcountry, would be going to the store, grabbing a packaged first aid kit off the shelf and throw it in your backpack. Because that is what the majority of people do. They get the first aid kit for the formality of having the first aid kit because it gives that sense of safety. But with having that first aid kit, they don't know the contents. They don't know the function of the contents. They don't know how to utilize that in the situation where it's needed.
It sounds like me. So I'll buy a first aid kit, and I'll usually just say, okay, I have a first aid kit. Seems like all my bases are covered, right? It's
right.
Like, okay, if something goes wrong, I have my first aid kit. But luckily, I've never been in a major situation where I've had a life on the line. But you have minor stuff that come up, right?
Right.
And I remember I opened a first aid kit, and I'm like, I have no idea what I'm looking at. And so, I'm literally pulling out the little instructions, the little pieces of paper, and I'm on the spot reading, what is this for?
Absolutely.
And it works in my situations where it's minor, but if somebody's literally hey, I need help within the next 5 minutes, and I'm there reading a scroll of what to do, I mean, that's disaster.
And there's a huge positive side to this, and there's a huge negative side. The huge negative side is that a lot of people are taking first aid kits into the backcountry that are very underwhelming. Most first aid kits that are off the shelf have a few staples in them, and they have a lot of those few staples. They have a lot of small pieces of gauze. They have a lot of Band-Aids, different sizes, different shapes. They're waterproof, not waterproof. They'll have a little bit of medicine, maybe some Tylenol and ibuprofen, and maybe some Stingies or a Neosporin or a triple antibiotic ointment. You're going to be pretty hard-pressed to find much more than that in your standard small size, backpacking size, off-the-shelf first aid kit. That's the negative side. The positive side is that if you take your first aid kit into your own hands and put some thought and effort into creating a first aid kit, you can not only create a first aid kit that is highly functional and highly specific to the injuries that you are likely to experience in the backcountry, but also much smaller and much more light than the first aid kits that you're going to buy bulky off the shelf. If you understand using some resourcefulness for first aid kit supplies, which we'll go over, and then you take the things that you can't really jimmy rig together in the backcountry first aid kit, you can find yourself with a first aid kit that's a quarter of the weight, a quarter of the size, and functional very specifically to the injuries that you're most likely going to experience. Now, that's not saying you're not taking any Band-Aids or any gauze or any Neosporin into the backcountry. Those are absolutely valid things that we will go over, but the idea is that what you take in, you want to have optimized for your situation, which is kind of what you're going to. And like Steve was saying, the first aid kits that we keep in our trucks where we are by the hospital in a fairly high crime area are very different than the first aid kits that we take into the backcountry where maybe gunshot wounds and seeing someone overdosed on the side of the road that we would see in our truck is not the experience. It's going to be more knife wounds and musculoskeletal injuries and things like that in the backcountries. Blisters, the little things as well.
You've done a very good job covering how to, I would essentially have a first aid kit specific to your activity. I'll one up it and say that you also have it personalized. For example, I deal with allergies, right? First aid kits don't come with allergy medicine. So I will manually go and purchase allergy medication and put it in my first aid kit because that's a personal need that I need. Like you guys, I don't think either of you have allergies, at least to my extent, that I deal with.
No.
So it's like that's something that I need. So I went ahead and, did that for myself.
Yeah. And that's something we're going to touch on. If you guys keep listening later on this podcast, we'll talk about how to build this first aid kit based on your needs. And we'll go over ours. So that's coming up.
So jumping into that a little bit, and one thing, we talked about this quite a bit in actually our first episode of this podcast, which was SOS Basin. And this kind of falls in the same category of situational awareness. But outside of your first aid kit, the importance of having a safety plan in place with either your hunting partner, if you're with someone, your family, if you're solo, or both, if you're with hunting partner, having a plan for if something goes wrong, how you're going to tackle that, how you're going to communicate with each other, deadlines on meeting back at camp, or landmarks on where you're going to meet if you separate to track an animal, separate for days to hunt, as well as pairing that with the use of a satellite device, either a Zoleo or a Garmin InReach, and doing the work ahead of time, using the devices outside where there is service, getting people connected, testing it, and again, like grabbing a first aid kit off the shelf, not just grabbing a satellite device, activating it and sticking it on your pack and taking it in the backcountry, because that's kind of that box you can check for the safety to know you have it with you, but being proficient in it, knowing how to use it. And I won't belabor it because we talk about it quite a bit in that other podcast, but the importance of having a plan, and you can go listen to a fun story of when Samong and I didn't have a plan, and that wasn't necessarily related to personal injury, but more of a wilderness survival hypothetical situation that we could have found ourselves in if it hadn't gone, a good way, and we would have kind of found each other again. Let's dive a little bit into the nitty-gritty and just start listing through injuries and what we can do about them in the backcountry, what we can deal with, what we can't deal with, and kind of work our way up the spectrum of severity, you would say.
I think most commonly, again, I'm just going to basically rapid fire these from a practical standpoint of what I would most likely run into on a hunt.
Okay.
Because this is a hunting podcast.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm going to specifically talk about situations that hunters often put themselves in, at least for me.
Yep.
So, for example, there's so many different types of hunts you can do, but I'm going to specifically talk about my style hunting. For example, there's a lot of tree stand hunters. I don't hunt from a tree stand, so I don't risk falling off a tree stand. I can still fall in other ways, but specifically for tree stand, like we're not going to cover it because that's not my style of hunt. So the most common one, I guess, regardless of what style you're doing, is the pretty minor and common stuff. Bruises, sprains, ankle sprains, and then the other one would be like knife cuts when you're processing game. So let's start with cuts, because I feel like that's going to be the most common one that people are going to run into. So I'm butchering an animal, cut my finger. What's the first thing? And we'll just take it as a very minor cut. No arteries involved. It's just a little poke.
First of all, your assessment of what's likely to happen is very well aligned with the data provided by American Wilderness Medical Association would be sprains, musculoskeletal cuts, blisters. Those are the 4 injuries that 60 to 70% they say are happening in the backwoods regardless of activity. Let's take that minor cut. I think first thing, the way we're taught in the professional world is we kind of look at function, right? Is it impeding function? That's going to be your first assessment. The way I like to translate it to more of a lace person who's just out there enjoying the fun is you're going to ask yourself, is your fun factor ruined or not? So if you took a cut and you look at it and you're like, man, this is not going to let me enjoy my dinner tonight, finish processing my animals, set up tent, that's going to be your first sign that this is probably going to be an injury that you're not going to want to address right there on the spot. Well, you will, but not something you're just going to stabilize and forget about. Let's say it is a really minor cut, just a little bit of bleeding. First things first, clean it really well. There's lots of ointment. Nate touched on some of them. I'm sure he'll touch on a few more. Best thing you can do, statistically showing that evidence shows us, is just clean it really well with clean water. That can be a problem when you're in the backcountry. I wouldn't just stick your hand in any mud puddle if you're hunting near an elk wallow and wash your hand in it. That could be worse for it. Don't pee on it. You hear people saying that too. Wash it with water. We like to say solution to pollution is dilution. So the more water and just clean water you can put on is probably the best singular thing you can do for your wound. Cover it with a Band-Aid. That should stop the bleeding. If we're talking about a minor cut, keep that thing clean. I like to use tape, and we'll get to my first aid kit later, how to address a minor cut. Band-Aids are great. I like to use them when I'm actually in the backcountry, in the woods, whatever activity is. They don't stay on more than an hour. I'm messing around with my tent, my sleeping stuff, butchering an animal. If I'm fly fishing, they just come off within an hour, and now I have an open wound again. So I carry some type of a tape. I'm not going to be product specific. Find whatever tape you like. Just wrap it around that Band-Aid. Keeps the Band-Aid on there really well, keeps it clean, keeps things out of it.
Okay, so you're only water. There's no like sanitization. So for example, like when you're touching meat, you have a lot of times you have dried blood or sometimes even meat, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's just water.
If you have soap, definitely use it. I do carry, you can buy them at Walmart, Amazon. They're $3. I have these little dehydrated soap. They're about a 2x2 inch dehydrated, super thin, weightless soap boxes that I carry in my pouch we'll touch on later. If you have soap, definitely use that. I should have said soap and water. But if the only thing you have is water, just clean it really well. Obviously, soap if you have it. If you have some triple antibiotic ointment, you have some basic tracing, definitely put it on.
Is there any ingredient that you should avoid?
People love to use alcohol wipes, oxygen peroxide. Feel free to use them if it makes you feel better. They will kill bacteria. Some evidence does show they also make wound healing longer. They're not the only thing you can use. It's not going to probably harm you.
Because they just kill more than the bacteria.
Yeah, they cause further tissue damage. Like I said, people have done it for generations. It's not super advised in medical society. If you go in the hospital, we're not going to put alcohol straight into your open wound. But if that's what you're going to do and it kills some bacteria, especially if you're dealing with very dirty, bloody hands, I don't think it's going to harm you.
So minor cuts, water, clean water, and soap if you have it.
Yep.
And Band-Aid.
Clean it, wrap it, forget it.
Clean it, protect it.
Mm-hmm.
Anything to add, Nate?
No, I think that's pretty good. Clean it and protect it. And like Steve said, Band-Aids tend to come off very easily in high use areas, especially like the hands and the feet. So even a lot of people carry gloves in their kill kits.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're doing anything where you're really high use, really dirty, especially like cleaning an animal and you're not already wearing gloves, just try to keep that area with a hard barrier from the rest of the outside dirty world.
Yep.
Whether that's duct tape or whether that's a glove with a Band-Aid underneath. But yeah, you really don't need more than clean water.
Exactly.
Oh, good to know. All right, moving on. Sprains. The most common one is probably going to be an ankle sprain.
Probably.
Yep. Evidence suggests supports that. Arms, legs, sprain of the ankle or fracture is definitely the most common.
What's the way to go about it? I'm hiking out there, ankle sprains.
So immediately what I would do, hopefully you're not by yourself or you're with a buddy, as soon as you stand up, see if you can bear weight on it. If you're at the point where you're not able to, if you're limping, if you can't put weight on it at all, you're not able to bear weight. And this is right back to, I'm going to keep jumping back to this, but in the medical field, they teach us to assess function. So when we see a patient, you think what function is impeded by the injury. And that kind of guides some of the medical decision. It gets a lot more complicated than that, but that's a basic dry cut version of that. I say to translate it to my outdoor friends, how is your fun factor? So your body just twisted an ankle. We've all done it. Sometimes I'll fall down a hill 3 times trying to retrieve a bear. I did it last year, and I remember stopping and telling myself, hey, you need to stop, like you're going to get hurt yourself. If you fall and you're like, man, that hurt, and you're still laughing, you're probably all right. Just keep doing what you're doing. If you get up, you'll see their facial expression will change. That's my first sign to take a step and see what's happening. If the person cannot bear weight on that ankle, you're going to want to immobilize it, and you're probably thinking about how to get out of that situation. So at this point, you're going to be shifting focus from your hunt, from whatever activity you're doing, to how do I get to safety. Hopefully you already have a plan. I know you guys detailedly described SOS devices and stuff like that. So I would splint the extremity. A good rule of thumb is try to immobilize it from the joint above and below. So let's say it's your knee, you're going to want to mobilize to your ankle and to your hip. One of my favorite things to do for that is I always hike with a trekking pole. I recommend 2. I love trekking poles, first of all, because you'll likely prevent a lot of injuries with them to begin with. I carry 1 mostly. One of the reasons because I have a camera and a tripod on the other hand. So I always have 1. Not only is that a great safety device, it's also going to function as a potential immobilization device that's fairly straight, fairly easy to use. You can use a stick. You can get creative out there. Definitely going to be the trekking pole. Try to immobilize that joint. See if you can take the movement part away from it. Use some padding. You can get creative. Nate touched on duct tape. We're going to keep coming back to that one. I keep some duct tape around my trekking pole. I keep some duct tape around my water bottle. It's a very useful tool for so many situations, not just first aid. You might get a hole in your tent, You can put a trekking pole. You can use duct tape. Try to use some padding. Whoever is hurt is going to tell you pretty quickly if you're doing something wrong. Worst case scenario, you can use a stick. A lot of wilderness classes like to teach that one. If you're truly in the woods, it can be quite challenging to find a stick that's going to fit just right, that's strong enough, that's not just going to snap, doesn't have sharp points on it. So track and pull, immobilization,
And just to clarify,
evacuate.
your stick is you're essentially strapping that stick to your leg
Exactly.
to make sure that your leg's not moving,
That joint that's
or
hurt.
not moving in a way that you don't want it to move.
Exactly.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And does that go the same for your ankle?
Pretty much any musculoskeletal injury, we're going to immobilize.
Okay.
Now, let's say it's a really light sprain. You're just twisted and you're like, man, I know it's there. My fun factor is not ruined. My function is not impeded. A simple mnemonic to remember is rice. You can elevate it. You can compress it. We like to use ice and rest. You're probably not doing a whole lot of that in the backcountry. I don't know where you'd find a pack of rice. I've just hiked a lot where my ankles were sore. Dip them in a cold creek for 5 minutes, then rest your legs up on a tree. You'd be surprised at what a little bit of rest, a little ibuprofen can do for you, which we'll touch on later. But your biggest thing is going to be your fun factor. That's what I like to tell people. You're going to immediately look at the person. They're going to tell you, you're going to know by their reaction. Is this something they can keep going, or is this something that's going to take him out of the woods? But a really bad injury is going to take you out pretty quickly.
Yeah, I guess the thing that we probably cannot be specific on is it's so situational.
Exactly.
And the severity level is so
Exactly.
it's too much for us to specifically talk about each one on this podcast. So we're being very vague here.
Exactly.
But I guess to just add on to you, it's like you got to measure and assess you or whoever's injured in that specific situation. And us also, I'm assuming, where you are.
Exactly.
Right? If you sprained your ankle 6 miles in the backcountry, you probably treat it a little bit different if the truck was 300 yards away.
Exactly. 2 different situations. Yeah,
absolutely.
Right on. What's the next most common one that people are going to most likely run out?
So we talked cuts, we talked musculoskeletal injuries. I think another one I want to touch on is blisters. These are a huge one. Probably one of the most common ones. And
so
you can,
I'm going to cut you off. So blisters are very common, and for the most part, they're not really anything more than being annoying. But are there like worst case scenario? What can come of a blister?
You're going to hate your life, and it's going to ruin your trip. And you're going to want to go home.
Can you die from a blister?
You can die from anything. You're going to. That's something we see in the medical field quite a bit. If you want to go super worst case scenario, any wound you have in your body does have a potential to get infected. Any infection can be lethal. So this is really an outreach to say you're going to die from a blister. Very unlikely. Are they annoying? And then I believe they're pretty much 100% preventable. And that's where some of your first aid stuff comes in. That's why I want to touch on them. If you guys take your hands, rub them together really hard, in about a minute, they're going to get really hot, and you're going to stop rubbing. For some reason, with our feet, we do not do that as humans. All of you guys have hiked for a little bit. You will know that as soon as you start walking, you'll feel the hot spot. You feel it coming on. Just stop right there. Take a 3-minute water break. Everybody else in your party will probably appreciate it. If it's us 3, we'll probably make fun of each other. Take some of the duct tape out of the water I talked about, stick it on there. Bring a Band-Aid. They sell so many different products nowadays. If you chose to, like moleskin and stuff like that, just prevent them to begin with. If you do get a blister, don't pop it. There's an endless debate of whether you should pop it, whether you should not pop it. Doesn't really matter. If you're hiking, it's going to get ripped off in the next 3 hours anyways. Just like we talked about cuts, if you do get a blister, it's ripped open, clean it, cover it, keep it clean.
The most common place is going to be your foot.
Yeah.
So to me personally, it's usually my heel first.
Yep.
And then I don't know what you call this vein right here, right on the backside of your ankle.
Mhm.
That's the other one because that's where where my boot typically ends. That's also a spot. So it's ankle or heel first. That spot that rides up against the back of my boot, and then it goes to either my pinky or my big toe.
Absolutely. So heels, toes, two most common spots. Some things you can use to address them. Some people use powders. Keep your socks dry. Do not use new boots. Please, please, please break your boots ahead of time. You guys touched on boots in your last podcast, but if you wear brand new boots hiking, you're going to get a blister. So break your boots in. Keep your socks dry. Very few items I carry two of. Socks is one of them. Some people like to use sock liners. If you're really prone to getting blisters on your toes, look at some great products. They have socks that are like your toes go into them, kind of like a glove. So I've talked to a few people that have really bad blisters in their pinkies and big toes. We'd like to call them first and fifth digits. Try those socks. They can be a life changer.
Do you recommend moleskin or whatever that thing is called?
Yeah, you can use it. I honestly have had the best luck with duct tape and other
Yep,
tape.
that's what I use.
Wait, you duct tape your foot? Like your actual skin?
Absolutely.
Really?
Yeah, so
Yep.
all a blister is coming from is friction. Like you were saying, when you rub your hands together. So if you create the friction point with your boot, if you make that boot's friction point with something else other than your skin, you're going to do a much better job of preventing your blister. And if that friction point is instead of the back of your heel, is against a piece of duct tape on the back of your heel, you are going to very well prevent a blister. And so something that I used to do with boots that gave me a lot more blisters than the ones I have now is I would actually pre-tape the areas that I knew were prone to blisters before I even started. So you could tape my big toe, the side of my pinky toe, and then a strip across the back of my heel. You, like Steve was saying, you can use sock liners. You can use moleskin. I haven't had a lot of personal experience with sock liners. I might know my dad swears by them to prevent blisters. I've used a lot of blister specific products in the past that tend to roll off with steep elevation hiking because you don't really realize how much, even in boots with quote unquote no heel slip, where your heel feels like it's sucked in, there's still friction that's happening on every single step. And when you're hiking in uneven terrain and on steep terrain and side hilling, the articulation of your foot in your boot changes so much that those patch type heel or those patch type blister prevention device, the ones that are specifically branded to prevent blisters tend to have the corners kind of roll up and the edges roll up.
Duct tape is
And
my go-to.
Duct tape's cheap and
And it's with me.
it's with you all the time, yeah.
So biggest takeaway, blisters, stop them from happening. The moment you feel a hot spot, don't wait 30 minutes. Stop right there. Put something on it.
And I feel like out of everything, this is probably the most preventable one.
Absolutely.
And another thing too is if you get blisters, because everybody will get them, if you get the chance, if you're sitting in glassing or you're around camp at night, pop your shoes and socks off.
Absolutely.
Let your feet
Let 'em
get
dry.
air. Let your feet dry, let your socks dry, and let your boots dry if that's possible, because moisture just adds a whole level of not good to your situation of your feet.
Right
I mean, from anywhere from blisters to trench foot to, chronically wet socks and boots, it can give you a whole lot of other issues. But if you have a blister there for that to get, that really increases your risk for infection and risk for the
This is
blister
giving me
getting
a lot
worse.
of flashbacks to high country deer camp where all of us would take our socks and shoes off in the tent.
Oh, yeah, that was a putrid time.
All right. Well, I think those are the four most common one that you said like 70% of people about.
60 to 70, you're going to get a sprain, cut, blisters. Yep.
This is the most common. Most people are going to probably not run into anything more severe than this. But because this is the podcast about it, let's go one up it.
Yep.
What's the next jump up of severity in terms of injuries? And we'll go from there.
I think we should take a step up from the simple finger cut to a more serious cut. And so this is, like Steve was talking about, a cut that is seriously impeding your function, or a cut that is significantly bleeding.
Let's define it. We'll be more precise. What do you mean when you say more severe? Are we talking about like artery cutting or just like a deeper cut?
So it could be multiple things. It can be the location. So you have tendons in your body, you have arteries in your body, you have veins in your body. Obviously, you have vital organs in your trunk. But let's talk about bleeding first.
Okay.
So let's talk about controlling bleeding. And so there's a pretty easy 2-step method to controlling bleeding. It's pressure, and if it doesn't stop with pressure, a tourniquet. And we're talking, this is anywhere from something that is controlled by pressure, like a paper cut on the finger, or a small nick while cleaning an animal, up to a very large laceration in your inner thigh that hits an artery during a fall from your trekking pole or from a knife accident or something like that. So this 2-step, and this is a national initiative called Stop the Bleed.
Yep.
And this is something that I've taught at First Aid. This is something that Steve teaches in relation with his work very frequently. And this is also has a bit of relation to what we carry in our first aid kits. But pressure is your first go-to all the time with bleeding. So if you have bleeding, no matter the size, you want to try to stop it with pressure. And you want to put pressure on the injury as well as above the injury. Above the injury meaning closer to your trunk. All blood flow comes from your heart and it gets pumped out from your heart. So the farther away you get from your heart is the direction of your blood flow. And so if you have an injury that, say, is on the middle of your forearm, that blood is all getting supplied by above on your forearm. So putting pressure directly on the injury as well as slightly above it to help try to impede some of that blood flow to the injury.
So basically, you put it on the injury and between the injury and your heart.
Between the injury and your heart, but just with when you're just doing pressure, just right above the injury. So if I have a cut on my forearm, I'm not going to be putting pressure up at the top of my arm, in my armpit.
Yeah, it's right next to each other, but just the direction of where you put that pressure.
Correct.
Should be between the injury and the heart.
Yep.
Not the other way around.
Yep. So exactly. Yeah. Not farther away from your heart. Direct pressure is king on the injury, and then if you have ability to put more pressure closer to your heart.
I think you guys touched on it very good. Nate kind of clarified at the end because we got a little complicated thing for the audience with above, below. One thing you take away from this, if you have a cut, whether it's a hole, it's a laceration, put pressure on it. Hopefully, we'll touch first aid kits in a second. Hopefully, have some clean gauze, something clean to stick on it. As soon as you make the cut, you're going to look at it, and this is going to be so individualized, and every situation will be different. But you'll know it's a bad or a all right cut. Like the moment, God forbid, you see a pulsating of blood, this is going to be an evacuation scenario. If you see a lot of blood, I tell people look at the ground. If you're seeing your blood putting on the ground and puddling, this is a bad bleeding, right? This is not going to be a fix it and keep hunting. This is going to be how do we stabilize and get out of here. Put pressure on it. Pressure trumps absolutely everything. In emergency department, in my career there, don't think I've ever even put a tourniquet on a patient. Very rarely will we. You can control insane amount of bleeding with just pressure. Mm-hmm. Tourniquets have their place, and we'll talk about it. Very important tool. But put pressure on it. If you have a hole, put things in that hole. Don't worry about infection at this point. Don't worry about cleaning that wound. If you don't have a first aid kit, you don't have a gauze, grab a dirty sock, grab your clothes, grab your game bag. Hopefully it's clean. Grab your shirt, stick it in that hole as far as it'll let you. The person you're doing it to or yourself probably not going to like it. Hold pressure on it and do not let go. You will never look at that wound again until you're seen by a doctor. They're going to undress it. They're going to look at it. So let's say you have a cut on your arm. And it's bleeding. Put pressure on it. Wrap it as tight as you can. And then look at it. Have you controlled it? You'd be surprised what kind of bleeding you can control with pressure and wrap it as tight as you can. Hopefully you're not cutting off your blood supply. We'll get to that too. But if you're looking at it and it's still bleeding, wrap it some more. Don't ever take that old dressing off. That's the number one point here is you hold pressure, you're never going to release it again.
Never readjust.
Never readjust.
Absolutely.
Put more dressing over it. At that point, we'll get there. If it's still bleeding, I would consider a tourniquet above, like Nate explained.
Yeah, and this is I can't overstate the importance of this because people are used to dealing with small cuts.
Yeah.
And what you do with small cuts is you hold pressure, you hold it for a few minutes, then you take your gauze or your
See
TP
if it
off, you
stopped.
look at it,
Yep.
see if it stopped. And with those small cuts, because the body is incredible at forming clots and at dealing with these small cuts, the bleeding does stop. So that's what we're used to having work. We hold pressure, we check, we hold pressure, we check, we hold pressure, we check until the bleeding stops. You don't want to do that. That you hold pressure, and what we are meaning if we say the bleeding is not controlled is not that we take the gauze off and it's still bleeding. It means that we're holding pressure, and whatever we're holding pressure on that
Still
cut
bleeding.
with,
Yep.
say that piece of t-shirt or that piece of gauze is becoming saturated with blood, and it's continuing to bleed around that pressure.
Yep. Then you're adding more pressure.
And then you're adding more pressure, anything you can, and more reinforcement.
Absolutely.
So you
Cloth.
just simply visually inspect whatever you wrapped around. You don't open it to check.
Exactly.
Correct.
So I guess one thing that kind of stood out to me is with the minor cut, you talked about washing with water. With one of these more serious injuries, the moment you notice that you don't clean it, you just go straight to pressure.
Yeah, it's a hard question. You look at it. If it's something you have, it's really, if a wound is truly bleeding, we're talking about a bad bleed, you're not going to be able to clean it. It's going to keep bleeding. It's impossible to clean it. If you have a clean water source near you, sure, put some water on it before you slap that gauze on there. I would not be spending time digging through cleaning supplies, first aid kits, trying to clean a wound. If you're looking at it and it's your leg and the blood's on the ground now, just cover it, wrap it. And I want to emphasize, this is not we're going to sleep with this tonight, we're going to keep hunting tomorrow.
That's an SOS.
That's an SOS. You're going to immediately think, this is first aid, not last aid. I'm stabilizing the situation. And we do like to say, all bleeding stops eventually. Whether it's you stop or you bleed out, it'll stop. So hopefully you're there for that person to stop that bleeding until they can get professional help. Now your response time in a big city where we're at right now is probably 5 minutes. Fire department will be here, EMS. They'll get you to a hospital. We're going to give you blood products or control it in other ways. In the woods, you're lucky if it's a 6-hour response time. So every little blood to drop you're losing. I would not be wasting time cleaning at that point. You're going to get to the hospital. They're going to probably give you tetanus shot. You're going to be on antibiotics. They'll be cleaning that wound. Solve the problem later. That's a life and death situation at that point. Hold pressure, get help.
And to touch on a few things that happen after that. So if you find yourself in the situation we're talking about where you have a cut that's needing pressure and needing you to get some sort of help out of the backcountry, your body has this setting that it's in called homeostasis. And all these different things throw off your homeostasis. And if you lose a significant amount of blood, that's one of those things. And blood is incredible for a lot of things like oxygen delivery, and another thing is temperature regulation. And so some of the things that you can do to help yourself, in addition to controlling your bleeding, is if you're waiting for help, you're waiting whether that's emergency services or a friend to come pick you up in their truck or what be that, two things you can do is keep yourself very warm. So wrapping yourself up in either that emergency blanket or your sleeping bag or your puffy jackets, and then staying hydrated. Staying hydrated is going to be an incredibly important thing to help absorb some of that fluid that you're taking into your bloodstream, help replace some of that volume you've lost. It's not as good as blood, but it's something that happens in the hospital. The number one rule of people that have a significant amount of bleeding is replace the lost volume. So those are two things that once you kind of get past the controlling the bleeding, whether that's with pressure or with a tourniquet, which we can touch on, it's going to be how can you make yourself the most stable chance of getting to that next stage of help safely.
With that said, okay, I know you talked about volume, but let's say you stabilized and you're waiting for a helicopter to arrive.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any, like, for example, like we take a lot of powder packets. Are there anything to supplement faster blood recovery than just straight up water, or is it just
not something you're going to do in the backcountry? No.
No.
It's just straight water.
Yep. Any sort of fluid at all that not alcohol or caffeine.
Yeah.
But any other fluid that you can get down is gonna be your friend.
Cool.
And
All
then they're going to do the complete opposite the moment you get to hospital, just so you know. You're not going to get any water for a long time.
Yeah.
All right. We touched on deeper cuts. What's about, I guess, level 2 injury that goes alongside this, if there's any?
I'd say at this point, big bone fractures are a big one. They also sort of with incredible amount of blood loss. And it's all going to round right back to your evacuating. So you break a hip, you break a femur, you take a hard fall, you think your large bone in your leg is broken. Those
So-
things can hold liters of blood.
Are we clumping both fracturing and breaking into one here?
We're just talking severe injuries that you're evacuating.
Okay.
You're not providing a whole lot of first aid. Just think of the same situation. If you break a big bone, how am I going to get this patient off of it? You're beyond first aid at this point. Other ones, we do. I have seen personal emergency room. There's some evidence behind it, particularly hunting. You're going off the beaten trail, going rough terrain, very physically exerting. Tends to work as a stress test sometimes on your heart. We've seen a lot of elderly hunters go out there. They develop some chest pain, other symptoms. Don't joke around with that stuff. Wilderness does not care about your ego. Let's say, touching on other injuries here, they might not be so injurious, but if you're with a friend that you noticed altered mental status, that's a confusing medical term, I guess. Any confusion, slurring of speech, patient, man, I'm getting too into work here. The person you're with has shorter breath, tummy pain you cannot explain, you have chest pain, these are, get out. Don't mess around with that stuff. I wouldn't be like, oh, let's just see what happens if my chest pain is still here tomorrow. You can get a complete occlusion in your heart, but the next day you're going to be dead. And then you still possibly have to physically exert yourself to get out.
Yeah.
So if you're older, you're listening to this, don't practice your ego, particularly when I'm hunting compared to other activities. This one, fly fishing, and something hurts, I'm going to go home. Hunting season might be 1 week a year. I took my vacation for this. It's important to me. I've put all this planning, time, dedication into this trip. It can be very hard to leave it. So if you're asking yourself, is my safety and my ego on the line here now? This is probably a first indicator, hey, I should reconsider this. And let's say your worst case scenario, you go back to the truck, you go see a real doctor, have them check you out, you can resume the activity, and you can enjoy years of hunting still.
Bone breaking, and I'm assuming a major bone. Like if I
Yeah.
broke this bone right here, like I'm probably still gonna hunt if I had to be honest.
Think back to the fun factor, like I said earlier.
Yeah.
You're going to ask yourself, is my fun factor ruined? So if I'm still enjoying the fire, I'm still enjoying a conversation with my friends, I'm making plans and Onyx of where I'm going to go tomorrow, you're probably all right.
Okay.
The moment you're sitting by the campfire, you think, man, I don't know if I should be here. That's your internal body telling you, maybe this injury is a little more than I can handle out here.
Okay.
Yep. So just besides, I guess the point I'm trying to make, these major things we like to talk about, and as emergency personnel, we love them: bleeding, fractures, bones sticking out. There's so many subtle things, and Nate will touch on them in a second with hypothermia, heat exhaustion. So just remember, confusion, chest pain, shortness of breath. These are all systemic things that are bad,
Okay.
and you're not going to treat them. You're going to go get real help.
Okay.
Yeah.
Those are all warranting of ending the hunt.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So next level, or maybe a different level, I think, if we're taking a step away from bleeding and then the kind of the systemic things, the things that go on through your whole body, like Steve was just talking about. Let's talk about a couple things that come mostly from the environment you find yourself in. And the three big ones are going to be dehydration, hypothermia, and hyperthermia, which heat stroke, heat exhaustion. I like the term hyperthermia because everybody knows hypothermia, low body temperature, hyperthermia, high body temperature. Like I said, with your homeostasis, your body likes to be at a very specific temperature. And when it gets outside of that temperature, a lot of things go whack. So first thing with dehydration is going to be your water safety and preventing the dehydration. Obviously, if you can prevent dehydration, you're not going to find yourself dehydrated. You're not going to have to deal with it. But a big thing with that is going to be water purification for two reasons. If you do a good job purifying your water, you will not get dehydrated because you will have plenty of water to drink. If you don't do a good job of purifying your water, you may still have plenty of water to drink, but if you get sick from water, most bacteria and parasites that make you sick in water, the biggest, most common, and first sign is diarrhea. And diarrhea in the backcountry, as silly as it sounds, can absolutely be lethal. It can cause a severe form of dehydration that is very difficult to replace by drinking more water, and it's something you absolutely don't want to deal with. If you've met anybody that's had giardia in the backcountry, these are, it can be anywhere from a bad day to a lot worse than that, and it's something you absolutely want to try to prevent.
Yeah, it's a important topic because diarrhea, like when I was a kid, when you had diarrhea, it's just like I would have diarrhea and then I would get sick, like fever.
Mm-hmm.
And that was just simply due to the fact that I wasn't drinking water. Because
Mm-hmm.
you don't, as a kid at the time, like nobody told me that you were losing a lot of water through diarrhea,
Mm-hmm.
and so that's why it's not just you have diarrhea, it's just like you're probably going to be at risk for a fever or something as well because you're not hydrated.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, they'll all dehydrate you, which leads to dehydration. Remember to drink a lot of water when you're back there. Another one, if you're doing early season hunts, when it's hot outside, if you're drinking 5 liters a day, I've drank a liter in an hour before easily because I'm so hot. Be careful drinking plain water. I recommend bleeding some type of electrolyte solutions. There's so many powdered Gatorades, fancy companies that'll supply you. Just make sure those supplements have some kind of electrolytes in it because you can dilute your body. First sign of that is going to be weakness, fatigue, muscle cramps. You're starting to see those things, drink some electrolyte solutions, keep hydrating.
So too much water can be bad.
It can be, absolutely.
Serious excess. Yeah.
In serious excess.
Yeah, in serious excess. And we're not talking about drinking a lot of water on a hot day. We're talking about, say, a week-long 100-degree Arizona hunt, and you're drinking say upwards of a gallon a day, like Steve says. What it can do is it can dilute your blood. It can dilute the electrolytes and the things that make your muscles work well, make your heart work well, make your brain function and your mentation good, your ability to think.
Yep.
And so, electrolytes are obviously a hot topic in the outdoors industry, but anything with some salt, even salt itself, just salt tablets, salty food, adding a little bit of salt to your dinners, which most dehydrated meals don't have an issue with. But most people are getting plenty of salt, but it's just something to keep in mind.
Yeah, just remember you're losing water through peeing, through breathing, through sweating. It's not just your urinary output. Good indicator is your urine color. So look at your urine. If it's really yellow, really concentrated, you should probably be doing more hydration. If it's nice and clear, you're probably doing just fine.
Yeah. So
if it turns to dark Coca-Cola color, tea color, I would
SOS.
Consider SOS. That's a bad
Really?
sign. We're not going to dive into it, but if your body is overexerting itself to the point where you're peeing really dark urine, I'd consider getting to the trailhead.
All right. Well, before we move on, I guess Giardia, that's probably the most common one you're going to get from drinking unpurified or unclean water. Let's say you do get it. Do you just simply say, let the diarrhea happen and stay hydrated? Or are you going to say, we're going to stop the diarrhea, take some kind of pill or whatever if there's any?
It's a tricky question.
What's your go-to?
Yeah. So there's two answers to this. In the medical world, they're going to tell you not to take pills to stop diarrhea because they want it to happen, flush out whatever bug's causing it. Let's forget Giardia. Let's say you're in a backcountry. I'm going to go right back to the fun factor. If you had a couple loose tools, your buddies are still laughing about it, you'll probably be doing okay. I do carry Imodium. That's something we're going to touch on when we talk over our first aid kits. That's something I can take to stop diarrhea if I was to develop it. I've developed diarrhea in a backcountry before. It's not fun. If you're going to the bathroom once, twice, 3 times, now you've gone 8 times in the next couple hours, this is something I would take Imodium and you're going to go get help. I would start thinking back because if this happens, if this keeps going and you really don't have a way of telling, by the time systemic symptoms get chopped to you, you're probably a little behind that ball game.
And I think what Steve's getting at here with the Imodium is it is a Band-Aid to allow you to get to that next step.
Yes.
So what it's going to allow you to do is, for those of you who don't know, Imodium is a medication that stops you up. It sucks liquid and hydration out of your GI tract. So when you have diarrhea, which is an excess of liquid getting pulled from the rest of your body into your intestines, into your gut, this does the opposite, and this helps counteract that. What that medication is going to allow you to do is it's going to allow you to get from where you are to where you need to be, so camp to truck, and stay somewhat hydrated along the way until you can then get to your help.
So that pill's like the moment you're popping that, you're getting out.
Exactly. You can take 2 pills, obviously, and we'll touch on how to take pills. Depends on your medical history, and we'll kind of touch on that in the end. So keep listening. But very clear instructions in the package. Read them. You can take 1 or 2 pills, and then with each occurrence, he'll take another pill. Don't go over the recommended dosage on the bottle, but we're not fixing anything. I just want to drive that point home. Whatever bug caused diarrhea, doesn't matter what caused it, it's still there. We're actually making it worse by not letting your body flush it. We're buying you time to get out of the backcountry to a safe environment. When it's going to hit, and it will hit again, it'll likely be a lot worse.
Okay.
And this is another just one of the amazing things about the human body is it does not do things randomly. There's all these things that happen to us that are extremely uncomfortable: diarrhea, fevers, vomiting.
Mm-hmm.
These are very fine-tuned responses from your body to try to fix whatever's going on. Your body has a fever to try to raise the temperature of your body and make it inhabitable for the bugs that are making your body sick. The diarrhea tries to suck water from the rest of your body to flush these organisms out of your gut. These are things that need to happen and are actually good in a lot of scenarios, but where the issue that we're talking about today is there are things that can happen in the backcountry where you'll find yourself in trouble if you're away from a stable place.
All right. One last question before we move on. So there's obviously different severity levels with, in this case, Giardia or whatever. What's like for those people that have never had it and like, let's say they got it, what's in a certain amount of time they go to the bathroom, what's that number of times where you're like, this is probably an emergency that you need to get out? Like, is it 3 times in an hour? Is it 5 times, or just how you feel, or is there a certain level?
I don't think there's a particular answer to this. I can't tell you, hey, if you took a crap 3 times, it's your time to go. Like you said, if I'm pooping 5 times an hour and it's diarrhea and I'm in a backcountry, I'm making a plan to get out.
Okay. So it's just one of those things where
your body clock is going to tell you the fun factor. It's the fun
right
factor.
Back to it, yeah. And if you all think about it, you have it. It's in you. Yeah.
You'll know that all of a sudden it's gone from being a little bit annoying to not sustainable.
Yeah.
Okay.
When your buddies laugh at you the first 3 times you ask for the wipes to the 5th time where they're like, are you okay? That's your first sign that, hey, let's reevaluate what the hell is happening here.
Yeah.
Folks, my take on it is when you run out of wet wipes or toilet paper, that's your time to get out. Because you're using
That's
sticks
great
or
advice
leaves.
right there, yeah.
There you go.
If you're to the point where you're on leaves, it's probably time to go.
Yeah. And just to touch on the preemptive part of this, the prevention part of this, water filtration and water management could be a whole podcast, and maybe a whole podcast in its own, if that's something you guys would be interested in. But some very just rapid fire things you can do to prevent this from happening is water filters. There's all sorts.
There's so many on the market right now.
SteriPens, there's all sorts. It's a light to help kill bacteria. It's not going to filter your water, but it'll kill bacteria. Bleach drops, iodine tabs, chlorine tabs, and boiling your water. These are all things that are going to help prevent this from happening. If you boil water, as just a quick side note, it's 1 minute of a rolling boil or 3 minutes above 5,000 feet of a rolling boil.
Yep.
Yeah, and I've had instances, or I've been on hunts where I've done 1, 2, sometimes even 3 of the same method for the same cup of water. Like when
with a concerning water source?
Yes, because I got it from a elk wallow, and so I'm like, I first filtered it, and then I did the whole iodine process with it, and then I boiled it.
Yeah.
Those 3 different types. I mean, I was just like, I want to be safe.
It's not going to hurt you. It'll hurt you the other way. Yep.
So, all right. So we just covered water purification, essentially. Hypothermia. That's something that we basically put ourselves at risk every time we do a late season hunt.
Yep.
Sometimes I feel like this is one thing that gets a lot of people. It's not even the late season hunt. It's a summer hunt, and a storm catches you by surprise.
Absolutely.
And you're out there with a base layer because you're thinking it's 90 degrees out, and next thing you know, it's like 40 degrees and it's raining and you're wet.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and to just put the nail in the coffin with these things, prevention is king.
Yep.
Because if you can prevent it, you don't have to deal with it. And this goes back to that emergency kind of preparedness and situational awareness. Yep. And so like you're saying, let's take the summer hunt example, the summer high country hunt where it's you leave the house and it's 85 and you wake up in the middle of the night at your new camp and it's 18 degrees because that's happened to me. It's happened to us together in the high country. I know it's happened to you. And it takes you by surprise. And so that's the reason why I always keep some things in my pack, like a puffy jacket. I keep some things in my pack all the time, like a sleeping bag. And forbid that I don't have one of those, I keep some things in my pack, like an emergency blanket.
Yep.
Because that's the emergency preparedness side of this, the first aid side of this, where if you really find yourself in a poor situation, that's what's going to help you out.
One thing to add on to that is fire starters.
And fire starters.
I don't
absolutely.
care if it's 90 degrees. I understand there's a lot of fire bans, But best believe me, if my life is on the line, I'm starting a fire.
Yeah, that's a different situation. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
I never leave my house without a puffy, even if it's summer fly fishing hikes. I've hiked into very warm weather fly fishing trips in the middle of July where it got really cold at night. Some storms rolled in. Sleeping bag. Those are my backup tools for hypothermia. You're not going to do a whole lot for a person in a hypothermic state in the backcountry. Good rule of thumb, if you're shivering, that's your first stage of hypothermia. So you're already too cold. Get warm. Put on your clothes, hopefully dry, clean clothes. Get in a sleeping bag. Try to warm up.
All right. Speaking on that, this is a very touchy subject when it comes to hypothermia.
You guys can cuddle too if you need to.
Do you, let's say it's a wet hunt, do you use less clothes but you're dry?
Oh, that's a good one.
Or do you put on all your wet clothes, down jacket, even though it's just soaking wet?
If it's wool, I would take it off. You're never going to dry it out. Synthetic clothing, even if it's wet, I'm going to leave it on, climb into my synthetic sleeping bag. Your body heat will dry it out. Try to eat. Food will raise your body temperature, your core body temperature. So the moment you're shivering, you get in your sleeping bag, try to get some food in your mouth, get your jet boil on, try to get some hot liquids down you, even if it's just warm water. So you're going to eat, drink something warm, cuddle with your buddy if it's truly life and death.
So regardless of whether it's wet or not, you're putting all your synthetic layers on.
Yes.
You would rather that. Okay. And then you're taking off all the wool that's wet.
If I was in wool that's wet, you're just never going to dry that stuff out.
Yeah.
I hope you're not out there hiking in jeans.
So obviously the obvious thing is, yes, anything that's dry, put it on.
Yep.
But if it's wet wool, take it off. But if it's wet synthetic and you really need that insulation, put it on.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right on.
Yeah. And so hypothermia is kind of one of the scary ones, especially because it's something you'll notice a lot. You'll hear stories of people that are hunting together where they make it out, and the hypothermia stories where people don't make it out are where the people hunting alone.
Yep.
Because it works in reverse to what you'd think. You would think the lower your body temperature gets, the colder you get progressively until you're so cold you can't stand it, and then until it's fatal. And that's actually the opposite of what happens. The early stages of hypothermia are where you feel cold, you're coldest. And this is what we call, in the medical field, we call this the cold stage, or the first stage of hypothermia. Yep. And this is the early stage. This is where you're shivering, your body's trying to produce heat by shivering, which is what that's do, all these little muscle contractions to produce heat. Your body's telling you, hey, we're cold, we need to change this. But this is where you will see your buddy piling on the layers, getting in their sleeping bag, starting a fire, doing those things. Where you need to be really careful is when the cold stage transitions to the warm stage, i.e. the late stage of hypothermia. And this is where your body doesn't have the ability to compensate the body heat anymore, and you don't feel cold. And this is where, when you're by yourself, if you enter this late stage, it's extremely dangerous, because with this warm stage, you don't feel cold, and something else that happens is your mental status or your ability to think clearly decreases. And so it becomes extremely dangerous for people by themselves, and because they do not realize what's going on. Yep. And this is where, if you are with a hunting partner, especially late season hunts, you see them shivering and you are watching them, and you see that progression from them going from really cold and shivering to kind of just spacing out maybe, or even some slurred speech or a little bit of confusion, or not shivering, not feeling cold, not moving. That's when it gets really serious. And that late stage of hypothermia is absolutely life-threatening.
Absolutely. That's an SOS, get out.
Yeah. And so
hopefully you're not at that point, but yeah.
Absolutely. And so tackling it early and just kind of keeping it in mind that, the shivering with the body, the feeling cold, it's telling you, your temperature's headed in the wrong direction. Do the things you can to mitigate that.
So shivering is first stage of hypothermia. You're already on your way there.
So despite the name, when you say there's the cold stage and the warm stage is simply a mental illusion. You're actually colder.
People do really weird stuff. They get mentally altered. They start taking clothes off. You don't know where to go at that point. They're completely disoriented.
Because, I occasionally, when I have time, I'll listen to survival stories and or people that go missing.
Yep.
And they'll walk up on a camp where the person's taken off all their clothes and he's just wandering.
Yep.
And they never find him. But they're like, It's the middle of a blizzard. Like, why is all his clothes here?
Hypothermia,
Right?
man.
Wow.
That's why I touched on it earlier without getting too many details. Altered mental status is a huge red flag, no matter the cause. Hypothermia can cause it, too hot, too cold. Other healthcare conditions can cause it. Shock can cause it. If your partner is altered, it's a bad sign. You need to get out.
So mentally, if anything's wrong mentally or off mentally,
It's a
doesn't matter whether
doesn't matter
it's
what the
cold or hot.
causation. Let the physician figure that out.
Something
Get 'em out.
Absolutely. And keys to look for this, if you're mostly, this is what you're looking for in your hunting partner. This is how really going to manifest in things like knowing where the baseline of your hunting partner is. So for me, it's a guy my age that's sharp. I know how he normally functions. If I'm hunting with you, Samong, and we're in a situation that we know is stressing, we're not just driving, but even if we are just driving, altered mental status is going to be things like repetitive questioning. So if I start noticing you've asked me the same thing 2 or 3 times now, and you're not getting it, sleepiness, uncommon sleepiness, like drowsiness, and as well as slurred or kind of garbled speech. Those are 3 huge red flags with altered mental status, along with like motor weakness. So just really, really weak muscles. Like Steve was saying, this is signs of dehydration, too hot, too cold, lots of things. But the repetitive questioning, the slurred, garbled speech, the confusion, and then that kind of sleepy lethargy are the really big red flags.
Those are the observable hints that something's wrong.
Yeah.
Very late stages of things being wrong.
Right on.
Yep.
All right. Well, that's hypothermia. Let's quickly touch on hyperthermia.
It's going to be very similar. There's 2 different stages we can mention. You have a heat stroke and you have heat exhaustion. Heat exhaustion, muscle cramps, muscle weakness. You know you're too hot. You don't feel good. You might have a headache. You might get nauseous. You need to get in the shade, the coolest spot you can find. You need to hydrate. Heat exhaustion, we're going back to severe stages of hypothermia. It's life-threatening.
Heat stroke.
Heat stroke, sorry. You're taking evac.
So what's going to cause heat stroke versus heat exhaustion?
Heat exhaustion will progress to heat stroke if you don't address it.
So heat stroke is simply a more severe heat exhaustion. So it's usually heat exhaustion first.
Yep.
And if you don't treat it,
Heat stroke.
it goes to heat stroke.
Yep.
So I'm assuming this one's relatively preventable too. Don't overheat.
Yep.
Don't overexert yourself.
Take layers off. Put any water that you can afford on your skin. Helps lower the surface temperature of your skin, just like you want to get water off of your skin when you're cold. Water on your skin will help cool you down. Obviously, hydrating with any cold water. If you're any water
So
sources.
let's say this. Let's say you're on your way out. You're lost. If you're watching on YouTube, I have a water bottle here. This is probably like half a cup. You or your buddy enters heat exhaustion.
Drink it.
Are you drinking this or are you putting it in your
Drinking
skin?
it for sure.
You're drinking it. Yeah.
All of it.
You can lay in your elk wallow you get water from.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you drink it for the fact that it's clean water and you can go soak yourself in any cup
And
of
remember, to get out of heat exhaustion, it's a slow process. It's not a matter of I drink some water and your body's back to normal. Your body's homeostasis, as he mentioned, is going to take a while to get back to that normal. This is not I'm going to sit under a tree for 15 minutes, get hiking. I'm going to consider shade, water, hydration. Maybe set up camp where you're at, and you're probably out for the rest of that day.
Yeah.
So
This is not going to be a quick recovery.
So if you catch heat exhaustion early, is it relatively easy to just resolve? Like just take a break, sit down, cool yourself, hydrate.
You can reverse it. I wouldn't say easily.
I mean, it is something that you could catch. It might not be a trip ender, if you're asking that. It's something that you can fix, just like you can fix early stages of hypothermia. You can start a fire and you can get warm and you can continue your hunt. One thing the body does very slowly, or should do very slowly, is change temperature. Bad things happen, very complicated bad things, but bad things happen when your body temperature changes too fast. So in fact, when we have patients that come into the hospital, whether it be that they're in severe hypothermia or severe hyperthermia, one thing we have to be extremely careful of is that we don't let their body temperature change too fast. Even in the extreme scenarios, we only let people's temperature come up over hours and hours and hours. Even sometimes over a day. And that's because we need to make sure that some of these very detrimental processes don't happen when you swing, because you do have the ability to swing your body temperature severely very quickly. If you are very close to heat stroke, you're in heat exhaustion, and you're hiking up in the Alpine and there's a glacial lake and you hop into a 38-degree glacial lake and sit yourself there, your body temperature is going to swing very fast. That's not the way to approach it. The way to approach it is say, look, I know where I'm at. I know this needs to be resolved. It's going to take some time. Let's start to cool off. Let's do things like lose the layers first. Let's drink water. Let's get a little moisture on us to help cool our skin down. Let's not jump in the ice bath and
Maybe
shock our body.
put your feet in it.
Exactly.
Yeah. Other couple things I want to mention, I guess. I think we're running out of topics here pretty quickly. Animal bites. Any animal bite, get out. You're going to get infected, whether it's a squirrel, snake. I don't care. Chipmunk bites you, you need to get out. You need to get an antibiotics go see a professional.
So if you do get bit on the spot, how do you treat it first before you get out?
Think back to the simple cut. You're going to wash it with soap and water.
You treat
keep
it like
clean.
that.
If it's a snake bite, don't suck it out. Don't lacerate it. People
Whoa.
talk about crazy things.
Don't suck it out?
Yeah.
You're pissing off a lot of uneducated people.
I don't know. Just don't mess with it. Clean it with soap and water. Get to a hospital.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, in that case, let's talk about rattlesnake bites because we have a lot of rattlesnakes here.
Yeah.
Let's say you do get bit. You have usually a few hours, right? If I'm not
Hopefully,
mistaken. Depending on where it is. Most of the
Yeah.
time, it's probably going to be your leg or something.
Yeah, the wounds I've seen, people got to the hospital just fine. They're deadly. Don't get me wrong. They're not as deadly as you're going to drop on the spot. It's a serious injury. You're getting out as fast as you can. Go into a medical facility. Clean it with soap and water. Keep it clean.
Do you
Don't
do
mess with it.
any type of blood restriction?
No.
You just
Nope.
clean it and just get out?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I guess one of the things I want to talk about is being preparedness. We've kind of mentioned already. Here, particularly Washington State, working in emergency department, I tend to talk to a lot of other first responders, local sheriff department, search and rescue teams. We've had overwhelming amount of rescues this summer, and number one cause when they're finding these people is unpreparedness. They get 8 miles in, they just get scared, they call search and rescue. So they're not even real injuries, I should say. I'm not discouraging anybody from calling 911 and getting help out there, but just doing your part to prepare before heading into the backcountry. You guys touched that in your previous podcast. Very important. Another one is your first aid kit's only as good as much as you learn to use it. Sai kind of touched on it, but by the time you're injured and your ankle's popped, it's not the time to open up your first aid kit and figure out how to use it. With a modern day of technology, there's so many resources for you that are absolutely free. YouTube videos, there's podcasts that are 100% free you can listen to that teach you first aid, survival, tactics, skills, little skills you can utilize, how to wrap a wound, how to wrap a finger, how to stabilize an ankle. Local REIs offer free classes. Wherever city you might be in, I guarantee you there's about 3 organizations that probably love doing it, educating people on today. So I encourage every single person, if you're going on to the wilderness, take one of these classes, prepare yourself, learn your gear, tinker with it. If you're a backpacker, you probably love tinkering with little gear anyways. It's a lot of fun. Educate yourself, educate your family. It'll come in very handy. Last point I want to touch on, we're about to start going over what's in our particular first aid kits. And these are other medications you might be prescribed at baseline prior to even heading outdoors. Maybe you already have medical conditions. You might have anaphylactic reactions to bee stings. You might be allergic to other things. You might have an asthma inhaler. Whatever that is, don't forget your daily medications you already take. You don't want to stop all those, leave them at home, end up in a backcountry and be off your meds. It's a dangerous situation. All the meds and medications and devices we're about to talk about, your best plan of action is to talk to your physician, whoever medical professional is, before going to backcountry. Make sure they're okay to take with what you're already taking. As a medical professional in the field, I guarantee you they will love to talk to you about it. It's not a subject that's brought up to us very often. If a patient comes in and they mention they want to go into backcountry, they want some advice, they want your input on it, your physician is probably going to love it. He's going to be excited about it. And just run it by him. Is there medical conditions you have that would prevent you from doing those things? It's just a responsible thing to do. With that being said, should we jump into what's in our particular first aid kits?
Bravo.
Absolutely.
And I feel like you two can probably build the perfect first aid kit. And I'm all here for it.
I don't know if such a thing exists. It's like asking what a perfect hunting rifle is.
Yeah, that's an hour and a half podcast right there.
Should I go first or do you want to go first?
I'll just rapid fire some of
Go for it.
the things I keep in mind because I know you have a bit more. I think you have a kind of unique way that you organize your first aid kit.
So how about you fire off because I know the items we have are very similar, and then I'll add to how I make sure I bring them with me because that's the first step to having one.
Yeah, absolutely. So I follow a bit more of a traditional first aid kit. I have my 10 essentials in one area. I have my actual first aid stuff in another area, and I don't pair it with anything else. but my first aid kit is its own little pouch. Some of the things that I keep is around the outside of the first aid kit, I keep a tourniquet wrapped. I know this is something that Steve and I have a difference on, where he doesn't take a tourniquet. I do. I know you can fashion tourniquets out of other things, and I know that you can make windlass winches with sticks and all sorts of stuff. I like to have the dedicated piece of equipment with me in my pack. I keep iodine tabs in my first aid kit for water, and these are not the iodine tabs that I use on the day-to-day in the backcountry. These are the iodine tabs that I don't plan on using. So if I plan on going in and using iodine tabs, I bring additional tabs. These are the emergency ones. I take steri strips. For those of you guys who don't know what steri strips are, they're kind of like butterfly Band-Aids. Butterfly Band-Aids are also a great option, and these work really well for closing clean knife cuts. So if you cut yourself on the hand, you cut yourself on the arm, you cut yourself on the finger, this is kind of like a stitch or a suture alternative until you can get out of the backcountry and get it properly fixed. But these are Band-Aids that they're skinny Band-Aids that you can put a few of them across and help pull that wound closed. Again, it helps keep bad stuff out of your wound. It helps keep the good stuff in. It helps the wound start to heal. Quick clot. Quick clot's the next thing I keep in my kit. This is not something that comes in most commercial first aid kits. It's also not the cheapest thing. I mean, we're not talking expensive, but we're talking for one piece of gauze, probably $4, $5, $6, $7. And what quick clot is it is a gauze that's soaked in something called a hemostatic agent, basically a fancy word for chemicals that help cause clots. So as the name implies, quick clot, this is if you have a bleed, you put this directly on the bleed. You don't take it off, as we talked about earlier, and this helps your bleeding there clot off and stop bleeding a lot faster than just traditional gauze. This is a great option. It's used a lot in emergency medicine. It's used a lot in the field. It's used a lot in the military. Couple other small things. These are my duct tape, my Band-Aids, my alcohol swabs, and my Neosporin. Good bit of duct tape, just a couple Band-Aids, and just a couple alcohol swabs. These aren't things that I'm stockpiling large amounts of in my first aid kit, but these are the things for those kind of small day-to-day injuries that happen that you expect. And then Neosporin's always just a nice thing to help, or triple antibiotic ointment, bacitracin, any of those kind of antibacterial, antimicrobial ointments that help keep something clean if you need to keep it clean for a few days. That is not ruining your fun factor, as Steve would say. So those are kind of just some of the highlights of my personal kit that I've built out for most of my backcountry hunts.
So my kit's very similar to Nate, what he just described. The only kind of difference I made is Nate talked about having one first aid kit, his 10 essentials. For me, even knowing what I know about getting hurt, if I'm in the truck, if I'm doing a day trip, I always brought my first aid kit. Anytime I got into the backcountry, especially as hunters, somebody who likes to videotape in the backcountry, I'm packing video cameras, optics, rifle. It gets heavy quick, as you guys know. You get into the late season stuff, you got a lot of weight. I would leave my first aid kit behind all the time. So what I did to make sure I always have it with me, and I highly encourage none of you guys to leave home without it. It should be a rule of thumb. Let's say you carried this thing for 20 years, you never need it. Great, you never opened it. I basically bought a little pouch that I have off Amazon, and I combined my essentials as well as my first aid stuff. The pouch kind of slips into two categories inside. So the right side is my first aid stuff. The left side is my 10 essentials. It's modified to me. I wear eye contacts. I can't see worth a crap, as you guys know. I always bring a backup of, in addition to what Nate mentioned, very similar setup. I have Band-Aids, I have duct tape, a few medications about to go over. One thing I do like to bring is a pair of contacts. That's just a personal modification because I wear contacts. I bring glasses and contacts, and I bring a backup. Spare batteries I have in there. I'm not going to go into my 10 essentials, but my first aid stuff's with it. So that way I never leave that kit behind. I have to bring it because I have my other essentials in there. One of the things you did not mention that I always have in my first aid kit is a triangular bandage. They're pretty damn light. If you guys go on Amazon, you can buy it like 10 for probably $3. Give one to each one of your friends and your buddies. It's basically a triangular shaped type of gauze. If you guys Google it right now, look it up on YouTube. There's 100 videos on how to use one. It's probably the most useful piece of equipment I can think of into formulating splints, wrapping wounds, I mean, there's a lot you could do with the triangular bandage. I'm sure Simon will throw something up on the screen for you guys, just an example, but that's going to go right back to educating yourselves on how to use it. I do pack a couple medications. That includes Advil. That's a type of non-steroidal anti-inflammatory. You can use it for some inflammation, minor aches and pains. I happen to have some back problems. I tend to get sore. Maybe you hurt your ankle just like a little bit, like we mentioned earlier. You can take 400 to 600 milligrams. I usually carry about 10 pills of that. I carry Tylenol. I carry Imodium. We touched on stopping diarrhea. I carry Zofran. That is a medication you can stop nausea and vomiting with, potentially. They do not sell that over the counter. You can ask your physician, whoever your primary care provider is, if they'll prescribe you some. When I traveled to Mexico earlier this year, you can buy it over the counter over there. So I just bought myself some Zofran. You can take it 4 milligrams to basically stop you from throwing up. Like I said, before you take any of these medications, check with your doctor. Make sure they're compatible with your other meds you take. Make sure they're safe for you to take. Another one I like to bring is a couple Benadryls. It's going to be my hero moment one day. I've never used it yet, but one day somebody's going to have an allergic reaction, and I hope it works. It's something you can use for allergies or allergic reaction potentially. So I think that covers them. Advil, Tylenol, Imodium, Zofran, Benadryl. If you're allergic, consider an EpiPen. Like I said, you're going to personalize this. And this little kit I change constantly. I have things in there that I add and leave depending on the trip. So if we're heading into a high country mule deer hunt, I'm going to take just my essentials because weight, I'm very cognizant of it. If I'm doing a day trip and I'm fly fishing, I have a lot of camera gear. I have other things. I have my little multi-tool little knife in there. I have a Phillips and a flathead screwdriver adapter for it. So basically that modular system just allows me to fine tune my little first aid pouch that I cannot leave without for whatever trip I'm planning on doing. Another thing I want to quickly touch on, mosquito, bug repellent, depending on time of year, tick repellent, sunscreen can really make or break your trip, and lip balm. Lip balm can be good for so many things. I use it for fly fishing to make my line float. I use it for my lips. Pro tip for you, make sure it's got sun protectant in it because you burn your lips in the backcountry. It's not fun. And we're just going to refer back to that fun factor. If it's a minor injury, you feel like you stitched it up pretty good, you're doing okay, enjoy your trip, laugh it off. If it's something that's making you reconsider your trip, it's your first indicator. It's probably time to seek higher level of care.
There you go. The only thing I add is my allergy pills.
Exactly.
So that's it.
Make it personal.
And one thing to add is if you're going with multiple people, sometimes you can share stuff in your first aid kit.
Yeah,
like if one person's packing gauze, for example, you're probably not going to need 2 packs of gauze.
Unless you're splitting up.
I kind of disagree with you, Samong, sorry.
Really?
So I'd highly encourage you guys, and we talked to that actually in the emergency room world. Whoever, and if you guys ever take a wilderness survival trip, they'll talk to that. If somebody's hurt, try to use their first aid kit, not your own. Remember that specialized to you, and it's designed for you to use if you got in trouble. If that person gets evacuated, everything that's gone with them, you'll probably never see it again. Just being honest with you. They're going to get to the emergency room, we're going to cut everything away. We're going to probably throw it away. It's going to get lost. You'll never see it again. So imagine if your first aid kit was on that person, they get wrapped up by life flight, they get flown away, your whole kit's gone, possibly with essential items. So typically the way we teach is if somebody's hurt and they have stuff, try to use their stuff first, leave the rest for you. Obviously, if you're hurt, I'd share my stuff with you, but I'm very careful. And remember, safety first. You assess the situation. You don't want to be left high and dry back there by yourself. Your partner is gone with your first aid kit.
Yeah. Interesting.
So different perspectives, but like I said, all this can be personalized.
Steve set me up for failure in 2021. He's like, leave your first aid kit behind. We'll take mine. I'm like, all right.
Yeah.
No, but obviously be smart about it.
Be smart cognizant. About it. Yeah. Both ways can work.
Yes. Well, with that said, folks, again, this is a very introductory level to some of the most common things that you're going to run into on a hunt, primarily how we hunt here in the western part of the United States. Again, this is not professional medical advice. So listen to this with a pinch of salt. Obviously, consult your own physician, your doctors, whoever, and have them help you cater to your specific medication needs. This is just us kind of touching base and giving you guys a general idea or an outline of what you might not have thought of that you might now be thinking about. So with that said, we're going to wrap it up because you know what time it is. We're playing Fast Facts. Nate, what do you got for us this week?
All right, boys. My fast fact is that mosquitoes are more attracted to the color blue than any other color. And although they are attracted to the blue color more than any other color, this is only if it comes paired with moisture or carbon dioxide, which is something else that they sense, which is how they find where they're going to
So
land
blue
and
tints.
eat. Yeah. So
Yeah.
if you're wearing blue, also darker colors, not lighter colors.
Interesting.
But yeah, blue's not the go-to move, which blue rarely is in the hunting world, but maybe in the fishing world or
Yeah.
other sides, avoid the blue if you don't want the mosquitoes.
Interesting. Is there a certain color that's like what you should wear?
Not that
Camo.
I saw light can't like lights like
If you wear camo, they can't see you,
right.
right?
That's right. And if you don't breathe, then you can't emit carbon dioxide.
Hey,
Exactly.
there you go. Awesome. Don't wear blue. My fast fact is also in the realm of animals. Despite the name, flying squirrels cannot actually fly. Instead, they are simply amazing gliders, and they can glide up to 300 feet.
300 feet.
And even more so, they can turn 180 degrees mid-glide.
No kidding.
Wow.
It's impressive.
And even though the flying ability is unique to them, what I found was more interesting is that the flying squirrel is the only group of squirrels that are nocturnal.
Interesting.
They are most active at night.
Can you hunt them?
Do they make good squirrel stew?
I'm sure they do, but I'm not going to find out. I'm sure you get a little
It
bit
could be
more
hard to
meat.
get on camera.
You get a little bit more meat on the wings. But yeah, I just found it
I got
more.
fun facts for you guys. I'm going to go on the spot, so hopefully I don't butcher it. Since we're talking about first aid and wilderness survival, we'll talk about the rules of 3 and the 3 fun facts. Remember, there's 4 and the rule of 3s, and it can come in handy in the wilderness. 3 minutes with no oxygen. You can go 3 hours in weather without shelter. 3 days without water. You go 3 weeks without food. So make your priorities based on those numbers.
Look at Steve coming through with the fast fact.
Amazing.
Let you just think of something on the spot. There you go.
That's the best way to do it.
They don't prepare me for this stuff, you guys.
Well, guys, thanks a lot for tuning in this week. Hopefully you found this interesting, hopefully a little educational. It's a little different than our norm. Obviously, huge thanks to Steve coming
Yeah,
out
my
for another podcast. If you guys want to hear stuff, even if it's not exactly hunting specific like this podcast was, send us an email, reach out to us. We'd love to hear. Obviously, this is a way for us to interact with you guys more, hopefully. So tell us what you want to hear about, and we get enough of it, and it's absolutely something we can try to figure out and talk about.
Send me emails too, I guess.
That's right.
You guys want to hear about fishing? Yeah.
That's going to do it for us, folks. We appreciate you guys tuning in, and we hope your hunting season is going well. We're in the middle of it. We got maybe about 2 more months of hunting, and then we're done.
It's crazy.
I hope you don't need your first aid kit.
Yeah. Stay safe.
See you next week.